Big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. This new year, get clean, quality, pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list, including Ritual's best-selling Essential Prenatal Multivitamin, designed with 12 traceable key ingredients to support a healthy pregnancy. With big changes coming up, take the small steps now and start today with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boy, does it smell good.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
That's good.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2, Thursday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show. Getting close to the weekend here. Boys will be back from Mobile tomorrow morning, it's my understanding. I don't know if they'll be on the show or not. It would not surprise me at all if Jacob Hester did not do off the bench tomorrow. The man was in Atlanta all week last week and in Mobile all week this week. Maybe he will do it. I haven't talked to Jake, but I think they were planning on leaving Mobile at about 3 o'clock today and heading on back. Maybe they'll be here tomorrow, maybe not, but they won't be in Mobile tomorrow. I'll tell you that. They've had a great run over there at the Senior Bowl, but we're getting close to the weekend. We'll get you there here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Chris Blair along in 15 minutes. We'll talk about last night in the PMAC, and tomorrow is his partner on the air. We'll have his 2000 Sweet 16 team honor the 25th anniversary of Stromile Swift, Jabari Smith, Brian Bashera, Ronald Dupree, Taurus Bright, Collis Temple III. Heck of a team. It was really, really good. Made it to the Sweet 16 where they lost to Wisconsin. That team will be honored on Saturday, and we'll talk to Chris Blair about that coming up in 15 minutes. Over at LouisianaSports.net, starting up on Tuesday of this week, started going around the diamond for LSU baseball and previewing position by position. We started things off at catcher. Talked about first base yesterday with Jared Jones. And so we'll move over to second base today, and that's where we're going to find a bit of a shift. I would have probably thought as of June of last year that you had your 3-year second baseman in Stephen Milam. Keep in mind, I think a lot of people don't remember who started on opening day for LSU at second base last year. Beck, do you recall who LSU's opening day second baseman was?
Josh Pearson?
Last year. That is correct. Josh Pearson started at second base last year. I looked it up yesterday. Stephen Milam did start the Saturday game, so game 2 of that series, and ended up that Josh Pearson started, I think, 7 games at second base all season.
I remember you had some kind of
bold prediction.
One of your bold predictions was about that.
Pearson would start more in the outfield than second base. And I just felt that way for like 4 different reasons. And one of them was that I thought Milam could win the job, and he ended up doing that. And Milam had a phenomenal year. He was LSU's second best hitter in the postseason when you pair the SEC tournament and the regional. Jones was phenomenal and was every bit as good. Tommy White was not quite there at that point, just didn't have as big a regional as you might have hoped. Had some big spots and just didn't quite come through with the big hit. Tommy White was a legend here at LSU, so I don't mean to disparage him there, but I was meaning to compliment Milam and how well he played down the stretch last year, and felt like he's just your prototypical second baseman. He's a switch hitter. He's scrappy. He plays good defense. He's quick. He hits towards the top of the order. Like, kind of looks like a classic second baseman. And the decision was made that they were going to move him to the left side of the infield. And when they made that decision, you realize, okay, well, we've got to figure out something at second base. And everyone is forecasting that Daniel Dickinson will be the second baseman on this LSU team, and for good reason. Daniel Dickinson has an incredible skill set. There's no doubt about that. He was at Utah Valley for 2 seasons, and over the course of those 2 seasons, he was incredibly productive. Absolutely raked. He hit .369 with 27 home runs over 2 years, and just last season alone, he stole 32 bases. So what you've got in Daniel Dickinson is a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound, great athlete with good speed and the ability to drive the ball out of the ballpark at Utah Valley. Here's where I am with Dickinson, because I just saw that D1 Baseball named him a top 3 second baseman in the nation. He's been forecast as a potential first or second round pick. And all that is great. I'm really for that. I hope that Daniel Dickinson is a superstar. But you have to recall that all this production came at Utah Valley. He went to Cape Cod, which is a very, very difficult place to hit. I'm well aware of that. You're using wooden bats. You're facing good arms. The ballparks are big. It's a hard place to hit. But he played about 25 games, not great, and I didn't see a ton in the fall. Now, keep in mind, I'm just giving you what my eyes have seen, and I understand that that's not the entire story. I'm the one who this time last year sat here and said, Paul Skeens was okay at Air Force pitching. Texas knocked him all over the place in the regional. I watched him pitch in the fall. Josh Pearson homered off in the first time I was out there. Like, let's just pump our brakes with this Team USA. Guy's got everything, and he's the best pitcher anybody's ever seen. So I don't get all these right. But I do have a shred of apprehension about Dickinson going from Utah Valley to the SEC. It's just a different game. It's very, very possible that Daniel Dickinson hits 360 with 16 homers and 25 steals. That's in his ceiling skill set. Like, it's there. It's possible he doesn't hit for power against these power arms and doesn't get on base enough to steal enough bases and isn't quite the player that everybody is saying, because this is moving up a level. I'm going to talk about this a lot over the next week and a half, but LSU is trying something a little bit different this year. Think about the transfers that LSU's brought in over the last 3 years. Tommy White, NC State. Jacob Berry, Arizona. Luke Holman, Alabama. Thatcher Hurd, Gage Jump, UCLA. Michael Braswell, South Carolina. Like, these are high-level programs that you're taking players from. And in a lot of cases, guys that have been very productive in what was the Pac-12 or the ACC or the SEC. You're counting now on Daniel Dickinson from Utah Valley. I'll talk about Tanner Reeves in a second from junior college, from Blinn College. You're going to talk about Anthony Ianson from UCSD. You're going to talk about Zach Cowan from Wofford. These are guys that are trying to step up in class. The SEC is so much better than every other league in this country that it's almost not even the same sport. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic. I really don't. So while it's easy to forecast Braden Montgomery to use another school, going from Stanford A&M and balling, well, we saw it in what was then the Pac-12. Utah Valley's not in the Pac-12. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Dickinson. I am not quite where the guys from D1 baseball are, and really honestly where like professional scouts and stuff are, that like, this guy's a star. Again, I'm not saying he's not a star. Understand, I'm expressing a little concern with the adjustment. You won't know the first 4 weeks. You won't know because you'll be playing the Utah Valleys of the world for 4 weeks. But I'm hopeful that once SEC play gets rolling, Dickinson does too. I'm hopeful he's the 55th pick in the draft and he's a star. He hits 4th behind Jared Jones. Like, that's what I would love to see, because the skill set, and by all accounts at LSU, the attitude, the determination, the style of play, all of it fits what they want at LSU. He's a baseball guy, and he's fast, and he's got bat speed and all that. But fast and bat speed doesn't do much for you if you can't make contact consistently with 95 the way you did with 91. It stands to reason his skill set will assimilate. I'm just being cautious about Dickinson. I will say that Tanner Reeves is an interesting insurance policy. If you don't know Tanner Reeves, went to Blinn College for a couple of years. He's a junior college player, left-handed, can probably play second or third. And I think he has some ability to swing the bat. I mean, at junior college, he hit 400 with 28 homers and 28 doubles in 2 years. He drove in 142 runs. I went to the scrimmage on Sunday, and he hit a home run out to right center field. He's left-handed, which is different than Dickinson. He's another left-handed bat on the infield, Milam switch hitter, so you got 2 of those that you can use. And I feel like there's a chance that Reeves becomes the 4th infielder. If there's an injury somewhere, may be able to help out. He's an interesting insurance policy. I don't think he has the tools that Dickinson has, but I do think that there's something to be intrigued by there at second base. And I think those 2 guys are the likely candidates to play second. It's exciting based on the upside. It's a little bit concerning based on, and I'm going to say, this is not a Daniel Dickinson thing. This is a gradual step up thing. I feel the same way about Cowan, same way about Ianson, same way about Blaze Priester, same way about Tanner Reeves, same way about Jacob Myers. Like all these guys that are coming from lower levels, I'm going to want to see it in the league. I'm just not in a spot where I'm going to sit here and tell you, yes, that guy is going to be awesome in the SEC. But again, I'll out myself again. I did this with Paul Skeens last year, okay? So feel free to say, Hunt, you're an idiot. I'm always welcoming that. But I'm going to sit here and tell you what I think from 1 to 3 every day. This is how I feel about second base. There's a chance Daniel Dickinson is a star. There's a chance, man, those numbers were inflated a little bit in a bad conference. I'm just curious to see. But I like the skill set. I do like the skill set, and I think Tanner Reeves offers an interesting backup plan there. So that's your look at second base. Milam moving to the left side. He's over there with Braswell. We'll talk about those guys. Mikey Ryan, who's the guy they're really excited about.
Big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. This new year, get clean, quality, pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list, including Ritual's best-selling Essential Prenatal Multivitamin, designed with 12 traceable key ingredients to support a healthy pregnancy. With big changes coming up, take the small steps now and start today with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hogg is a young freshman infielder that they think has got a bright future as well. So plenty to talk about on the infield on tomorrow's show. We'll talk about shortstop, which I'm excited to do. We're going to go through all of the positions on the diamond, as well as the starting pitching and relief pitching throughout the course of this series. If you want to read it, written word, always there at louisianasports.net, always free. Every morning between 7 and 8:30, I will have the next installment of the position previews. Right now, second base up there at louisianasports.net. Go check that out. By the way, lots of stuff over at louisianasports.net today. Charles Hanniger wrote a great little notebook column today that talks about the Super Bowl, talks about the Saints, talks about LSU basketball, talks a little about the Pels as well. You can check that out. Ross Jackson's got some really good stuff from the Senior Bowl. His latest column is titled "The Saints' Upcoming Changes on Defense Could Maximize Their Talent and Avoid Some Past Pitfalls." Chris Marler is still on football. I know y'all love football. Go check out his one burning question for each SEC team as they enter the spring. He's got Arkansas up right now. Plenty stuff over at louisianasports.net. Always invite you to go check that out. I saw somebody at the PMAC last night who came up to me and said, "Hey, I listen every day. I thought, I think you do a great job on the radio." So that's great. I appreciate that. He said, "But I was real skeptical when y'all launched that website. Some radio guys trying to write. I didn't think that was going to go so well, but you do a pretty good job." I said, "Well, thanks. I actually graduated in print. That's where my background generally is. So I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy the work that we're doing over there at louisianasports.net. We really appreciate y'all for clicking and reading and being there every single day for us there. It's been great since we launched things back in August. All right, let's step aside. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers. He's with us coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com. Jonathan Carbo and his team are awesome, and you can take my word for it, or you can go to their Google reviews. How often do you get online and review your insurance broker if you're a business owner? I'm guessing you don't. It's not something that happens all that often. But Jonathan Carbo and his team take such good care of their clients that they've got over 100 positive Google reviews right there. It's the Highland Insurance Group. Go check it out. They're experts in terms of the coverages that are required for each and every business. If you're just not sure exactly what you need from an insurance perspective, let them take a look at it. You worry about running your business. That's your job. Let them handle the insurance side of things. Trust them as a part of your team. You trust your attorney, you trust your CPA, trust your insurance broker, and make sure that they're qualified, like the Highland Insurance Group. Jonathan Carbo's team can be found online at HighlandIG.com. They're right here in Baton Rouge. Happy to help you wherever you are in the state of Louisiana. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Tigers lose last night in the PMAC to the number one team in the nation. Auburn gets out with an 87-74 win. It was a fun environment in there for a lot of the game. A lot of Auburn fans in there, and LSU fans did their part to get in there and make it a pretty raucous environment. Best one that I've been in this year, but ultimately Auburn too much for LSU. Chris Blair was courtside on the call and joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Chris, how are you?
Good, huh? Good.
Let's talk a little bit about last night. What was your call like on Auburn's first possession when they got 6 offensive rebounds?
It was crazy. I mean, I've never really. I mean, even Coach Brady, who has seen a lot more basketball than I have. I mean, he was like, I don't know that I can ever recall, that many offensive rebounds coming up, with 0 points. And I mean, we got to the first media timeout, and they had 9 rebounds. Yeah. All 9 were on the offensive end. Again, I likened it a little bit to the start of the game against Alabama. I think Auburn was maybe a little surprised. Wait a minute, these guys aren't going to let us just push them around. And frankly, I didn't think LSU, gave anybody a reason to think they would, especially in the first 3 conference games. I mean, I think they got handled pretty good by a Vanderbilt team physically. Certainly they did in the second half against Ole Miss. Again, I thought it was a great start. It's one of those things that it reminds me when you look at the last 2 games, and I preface everything I say based on the fact that when you look at those 2 rosters, Alabama and Auburn, and you kind of see why they're as good as they are. I mean, they're talented, they're deep. And in Auburn's case, I was impressed because there was a quick moment down the stretch when LSU cut it to 5 that I really thought if Auburn played the way they have maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, early on in Coach Pearl's tenure, they would keep coming down and shooting threes with 8 seconds off the shot clock.
Yep.
They don't do that. They came down and said, we're going to get it to our money guy. We're going to go to Janai Broome. He's going to get fouled, even though he's only a 64% free throw shooter. He certainly didn't look like it last night. But he's also makes some really tough shots, in and around the box. So that to me showed me why this Auburn team may be the best one Bruce has ever put on the floor, just simply because they can shoot outside, but they don't completely rely on it. And when they really need to get something, they know where to get the basketball to. And I think that's something LSU has struggled with. And I know we talked about it last week. There in the first half, Cam picks, unfortunately, his second foul, and then he sits, and suddenly it becomes a 10-point Auburn lead. And he's your scorer. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. I know that Jordan Sears had 21 against Alabama, and teams are going to game plan for Cam Carter. They're going to try to take him away above everybody else. But when he's that type of prolific scorer, when he's on the sidelines, that's the scare you have if you're LSU, that teams like Auburn and Alabama and, frankly, just about everybody else in the SEC, that's when they can take advantage when LSU goes on a 2.5, 3-minute scoring drought, and suddenly a 2-point game or a 1-point lead becomes a 9 or 10-point deficit in the blink of an eye. And I think that's what we saw. And I thought also after the media timeout at the 15:42 mark or somewhere in there, Auburn looked different. Again, I thought they took a couple of body blows early, and then they kind of settled in.
And to your point, and I missed this in my stats roundup in the story I wrote for the site last night, but Cam Carter played 31 minutes last night, and the score between the 2 teams in those 31 minutes was tied. He sat 9 minutes, and LSU lost those 9 minutes by 13 points. And that's kind of to your point. I mean, he scored 24 points on 9 shots. That's as efficient as you can possibly be. But he only took 2 threes. You're sitting there courtside. Did you see Auburn really focusing on trying not to let him get free?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the final 10 minutes of the game. I mean, and even Coach Brady mentioned the fact that you got to find a way, whether it's having him bring it up the floor. I mean, there's got to be a way he's got to have a touch. And I thought they did an excellent job of just keeping them away from the ball. And they do a really good job, a lot like Ole Miss did, where they try to push everything offensively for you into the corners. And then all of a sudden when they trap, you can't really decide, hey, I got to get the ball to Cam. You got to get the ball to whoever's open. And that's what good defenses do. It's interesting because, I feel for Coach McMahon and the staff because, there's been games where you go, okay, these are the problems. We got to fix them. And obviously turnovers, 42 of their points last night come off offensive rebounds and turnovers. That's not going to – a number 1 team's going to beat you. In fact, it's probably good they didn't get beat worse. But most teams are going to beat you at this level when you give up that many opportunities. But LSU shot the ball extremely well. I mean, it's maybe one of their best shooting nights in league play. But it's those other things that just constantly you can't get corrected. And as Coach McMahon and I talked about after practice yesterday before the game, I mean, it's going to take the best game. And they've played some good games this year, non-conference, and they've had stretches in conference games where they played well. But going into that matchup last night, there was no margin for error. And when you start approaching, 20 turnovers and giving up, 25 offensive or 25 points and second chance points, I mean, you're not going to beat the number one team in the land.
The issue with the turnovers to me, and Matt McMahon alluded to this in the postgame where we were, I'm not sure what he said to y'all courtside, when Glenn West asked him about the turnovers, like, I wish I had a good answer. And as I'm sitting there, I'm going, if it was one thing, then you could maybe fix it. If you're getting trapped too often, maybe you can fix that. If you're going too fast, maybe you can fix that. It's all in the backcourt or all in the front court, maybe you can fix that. But, I mean, Derek Fountain had 4 turnovers. Jordan Sears had 6 turnovers. Sometimes they're going too fast. Sometimes they get trapped in the full court. Sometimes they stand out of bounds when they catch the ball. It's just there are too many holes to try to plug in the turnover wall, it just looks like.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, first of all, it starts with too much dribbling, too much single one-on-one dribbling. And that causes problems because teams want you to do that. That's what they almost bait you into doing that. And then I think sometimes, to your point about moving too fast, maybe you do make a good move. You get a crossover, you get a step on a guy, suddenly you're in the paint. I just think there's a tentativeness on what decision you're going to make. And then suddenly, most of these SEC teams are going to collapse. When you touch the paint, they're taught, get everybody on the paint and don't give them an open look. Well, that's when it's got to be kicked out. I mean, it doesn't take a mathematical genius to figure out if 3 guys collapse on you in the paint, you got some open guys out there. And I think sometimes there's just a hesitancy. And it may just be, I'm just trying to get something. And then, oh, whoops, I really didn't have a plan. So you're right. I mean, the turnovers come in all different phases, but the live ball turnovers, which we all know are just death nails. Yeah. I mean, Coach McMahon says it all the time. If you're going to turn it over and let them get a dunk on the other end, sling the ball up to the band and make them put it in play.
No doubt. So it's a tough stretch, obviously, for LSU. They've just gotten through with road games against A&M and Ole Miss and Alabama, and then a home game against the number 1 team in the country. Now, although you're 1-6, you look up and you go, okay, Texas is coming in, and you're at a Georgia team that's not great, and Ole Miss comes to you, and then you're at Arkansas team that's a mess, and Oklahoma's not great, and South Carolina's next. Plus Florida coming in. Like there's a run of games that you feel like you should be pretty competitive in starting on Saturday. I'm curious, in your time around the team, how do you feel like their mindset is right now?
Well, I think they have to have the mindset that this is the stretch. This has to be the stretch. I heard a lot of people say, well, the first couple of games, you got to get those under your belt. And sure, I mean, it always is great to get off to a great conference start. Although I will argue with just about anybody that this is not your daddy's Vanderbilt basketball team. This may be one of the most talented Vandy's team in quite a while. But having said that, once you got through this murderer's row, and I put Texas A&M in there because at the time they were a top 15 team and you're playing at their place. And oh, by the way, they've suddenly now started selling out Reed Arena. So that's a tough place. But as you pointed out, now you've got a stretch of games where if you can't find a way to get over the hump and pick up wins, it's the season may slip right out of your hands. And I know that, I don't mean to sound doom and gloom, but you're right. The Texas team coming in on Saturday, they fell last night in a close one in a tough place at Oxford. And obviously the storylines of Chris Beard taking on his old school and his old assistant, all of that. But credit Ole Miss, they got the win. But Texas had gotten 2 pretty good wins, including that, 22-point comeback against Texas A&M. So this is not a gimme. And maybe 3 weeks ago, people thought it was going to be, but it's not. But it is a doable game. You're playing at home. There have been improvements. If you look at the tape over the last 2 games, it didn't result in a win, but there has been improvements. But you're going to have to get some wins in this stretch here, or it's going to be a long back end of this season.
Your cohort on the call, John Brady's team, is going to be honored for their 25th anniversary, making the Sweet 16 back in 2000. I know you weren't around here in 2000, but a 12-year-old Hunt Palmer was locked in on that team as they kind of went on a run with Stromile Swift and Jabari Smith and some of those great players. I know that's going to be a great weekend for Coach Brady and for those guys that are coming back, and it sounds like they're going to have really good attendance for this reunion. So what's that going to be like for you to watch Coach Brady with his first really, really good team?
I'm super thrilled for him. I mean, he mentioned this to me, Hunt, in September. I mean, well before we even, or at least on my radar, basketball was there. I mean, we had just started football, but he said we're going to put this together, and LSU had wanted to honor not only that team, but we're going to honor, obviously, teams from the all decades teams. Actually, they've got, I think, well over 100 plus that former players from every decade that'll be there. But he's extremely happy, and he couldn't say enough about how LSU and Emily Dixon with the Letterman's Club, they all kind of really got behind this. And I think it's a good thing because, LSU has a great basketball history. And I know there's been big gaps where maybe they haven't been where we all wanted them to be over the years. But they've had some really good teams, really big moments, and really good coaches and really good players. So I like it. I know John was impressed last year, and I don't think he'll mind me telling this story. They did something similar when we played at South Carolina, had that thrilling win, if you remember, at Colonial Life Center. They did the same thing, and they had players from South Carolina that went back to the 50s, and they lined them up from baseline to baseline. And I remember John watching that thinking, this is really cool that South Carolina is honoring, the basketball. So, I'm not saying that was the genesis of this, but I know he is tickled that there's going to be an opportunity, not just to highlight that 2000 Sweet 16 team and the great players he had, but really, when you've been investing in it, like Coach Brown and obviously Coach Brady and, any coach in any program, I mean, you want to highlight everybody who's worn that uniform. And so it should be a great weekend. I hope the fans will come out. They'll see some people they haven't seen in quite a while. And we get to celebrate a Sweet 16 team. So, the most important thing is hopefully we can beat the Longhorns.
That's true. That Sweet 16 team did beat the Longhorns in an NCAA tournament. So that's good. Good day to get it done. Chris, we appreciate some time. We'll talk next week.
You got it, buddy.
Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers. You can find him on the LSU Sports Radio Network, and he's with us every single Thursday. Thursday show is brought to you by Rouse's Markets. 30 minutes to go. We'll come back with a little bit more. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
.104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge is your home for the New Orleans Pelicans. Tune in as they host the Celtics tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pelicans are 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, and also 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge and Citizens Bank and Trust want to help you cover your car payments. It's a $5,000 grand prize with a bonus chance to win free car washes from Benny's Car Wash for 6 months. We're also letting you earn extra entries by subscribing to our LouisianaSports.net daily newsletter. Sign up, visit 1045ESPN.com.
The folks over at On3, of course, we talk to Matthew Bruni from the On3 crew every single Wednesday. We talk to J.D. Piquel during football season on Wednesdays as well. The whole crew there put together their final top 300, which they call their On 300. Cool little play on words there. But they released their final one for the high school signing class of 2025. And LSU is, as you might imagine, very well represented in that top 300. There are 12 LSU signees in that number. This was a day, we haven't gotten to February where signing day would be, but the rankings were like such a huge thing to me as like a middle school or high schooler into college, like just huge, huge deal. And over time, that kind of wore off as far as tracking them day by day. It's still important when the ink dries what kind of class you've got. And as of like 10 months ago, I still thought that was vitally important. And now I think it's important. It's always going to be better to have a really, really good player for 3 years instead of 1. But the fact of the matter is that all of these guys who sign with LSU have the ability to bolt at any point. Just gone. So it's hard to like get all jazzed up about what guys are going to be over their 3 or 4 year career at LSU when there's so much turnover. But still, you want to bring in high profile and really talented high school players. Sometimes you bring in a class that's got Lance Hurd and Deshaun Womack and Walker Howard and Shelton Sampson in it, and none of them play for you anymore. Like, sometimes that happens. But sometimes you sign young players that become stars, like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. So I'd like to take my chances with some really good high school players. And if they don't work out, they don't work out. And by On3's count, LSU's got some really good high school players. 3 of them are 5-star players. You already knew that DJ Pickett was a 5-star. He started his run as a sophomore as the number 1 safety in the country, is now thought of as On3's number 1 cornerback in the country. He's ranked as the number 10 player overall in the class. Crown jewel of Corey Raymond's big haul here. Harlan Berry is thought of as a 5-star recruit as well. He was the number 1 running back in the nation as a sophomore by On3. He's the number 1 running back in the nation today by On3. He is the number 18 player in the country. Those 2 were already 5 stars in this class. But another one was added today, and that's Carius Kern, the offensive lineman from Arkansas. He's the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the nation by On3. And the number 28 player in the country. The way On3 does their rankings is they make sure there are 32 5-stars every year. Exactly. Not like at least 32 exactly. And that's to be representative of the number of first-round picks there are in the NFL draft. That's kind of the way they've modeled their ranking system to translate, hey, in 3 to 4 years, like these are the top 32 guys. Of course, that's never going to work out exactly like that, but that's the reason they do it. And so for LSU to have the number 1 corner, number 1 running back, number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country, all top 30 players in the country is a great pull for this program. If you're looking for some rankings for some other guys in this class, the next man up is number 89. That's Teron Francis, the wide receiver from down there in New Orleans. He's thought of as number 13 wide receiver in the country, number 89 player in the country. Jaden Breaker, linebacker, number 10 linebacker in the country, number 112 overall. Solomon Thomas, a late addition to this class that actually ends up working out because he was committed to Florida State because of Alex Atkins, who was the offensive coordinator there. And then Alex Atkins got fired. Then Solomon Thomas reopened his recruitment, and then he signed with LSU. And then Alex Atkins got hired by LSU. So Solomon Thomas has got the guy that he wanted to play for, plus Brad Davis, and he's here at LSU, number 5 interior offensive lineman. So with he and Kern, you got 2 of the top 5 interior offensive linemen in the country. Thomas comes in at number 126. Those are your top 50 players, 6 of them in this class. Aiden Anding, cornerback from Ruston at 160. JT Lindsay, the talented running back from North Louisiana, is number 173 in the country. You've got Damian Shanklin on the edge, number 231. Jace Thomas, wide receiver, safety at 238. Charles Ross, big-time linebacker at 263. And Phillip Wright, the wide receiver from New Orleans, down there at 278. LSU in total has 12 players in the top 300. I mentioned 6 in the top 150 and 4 in the top 100. We'll see how many of these guys hang around, how many of these guys contribute. It's a weird world now, and it feels odd to me to have kind of thought along with Brian Kelly in thinking that you really needed to build your program from the high school ranks. Like, I fully agree with that. I didn't even think it was homerism that I thought that. I thought that just seems reasonable. LSU can recruit high-profile high school players. They've done it for 2 decades. They've won at an elite level. They've played for 4 national championships and won 3 of them because of the great players in this state and the guys that they can attract nationally. They can bring in, develop, and play for 3 years, 4 years in some cases, and play in the NFL. That seems reasonable to continue to do that. Ole Miss has never done that, so why would they try to do that now? They can just go to the portal because that's the only way they can make it work. And then you saw LSU shift, and I'm kind of thinking along with Brian Kelly, and I'm going, yeah, kind of makes sense, because if you've got some 5-star guys that really can't play, you're going to need to go restock those shelves, and you got to do it out of the portal, and that's guys that you know can play because they've oftentimes done it at the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10 level. So I don't think you can do this one way. I don't think you can only work the portal. I don't think you can only work high school. Clemson kind of proved that a little bit. But the mix is different than I anticipated it being 10 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when all this started really churning. It feels like now you go get high-profile high school players, You go sign them and make sure that you have young players that you can develop with the understanding you're going to have massive attrition there. And then you've got to go be really aggressive in December and go fill out your roster. Like I don't know how you could argue against that. I think Kirby Smart might be the exception to the rule, but I mean, Ohio State was loaded with transfers on that team that just won a championship. Now you got Jeremiah Smith, like that's a guy that you recruited, but you got Will Howard out of the portal and you got Caleb Downs out of the portal and you got Quinshon Judkins out of the portal and you developed Jack Sawyer and you want to do that too, but you gotta do both. And you got to do both very aggressively. And so I feel like LSU has done a really good job in this class of getting some really high-level players, and you got to continue to supplement it out of the transfer portal, which I think they've done for the most part. So for LSU, 12 signees in the top 300 on3, 6 in the top 150, 4 in the top 100, and 3 5-star recruits, Carius Kern, Harlem Berry, and DJ Pickett. I don't believe LSU is going to sign any other high school players in this class. Sounds like the roster is just about set for the spring and really moving toward the spring transfer portal window, which you don't expect to be too busy. And then you point your ships towards August and September, and you go try to make a playoff. So that's your LSU football chatter for today. If you're looking for LSU football talk, earlier today I talked about Miles Frazier and his interview with the guys on Off the Bench. That's on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. You can also find it wherever you find your podcast, Hunt on LSU. LSU football all year round. For those of you that aren't locked in on baseball, don't care at all about basketball, you just want your football, Hunt on LSU. Wherever you find your podcast, that's LSU football all year round. Step aside, come back and close it out. Say Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Your buying experience at Genesis of Baton Rouge is going to be luxury in every way. You're going to feel like a guest at the dealership, not a customer. Their brand ambassadors are going to help you each and every step of the way. That can be in the store or completely remotely. If you go to GenesisofBatonRouge.com, you can search the entire inventory online. If you see something you might want to get behind the wheel of, tell them. They'll bring it to you. They'll bring it to the office. They'll bring it at home. Your brand ambassador will get behind the wheel with you, help you drive it around, give you tutoring on all the great features that they've got there, show you all the safety features. And if you decide you like it, they can do digital delivery, do e-contracts, all that. You never have to set foot on the dealership. Just part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. Also part of that experience, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Auto part of that, 3 years complimentary maintenance. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Check them out online. GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Genesis of Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
OTB, AFR, and the Hunt Palmer Show are hitting the road starting next week for Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. They will be on Radio Row every single day, live and local for you. Our coverage is presented locally by LeBear's Casino Hotel Baton Rouge. You can listen on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge and, of course, watch on the 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel.
I just got to look at the seating chart for Radio Row.
Yeah.
They'd sent that to us. Makes SEC Media Days look like child's play. This is going to be quite an operation down there in the convention center.
Who's the neighbors for us down there?
ESPN National is across the walkway.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know. We just got our assignment, and they're all numbered, so I don't know who anybody else is. But okay. I do know what number. I do know what ESPN Radio means.
Yes,
they don't have a number. They're just ESPN Radio.
They're just ESPN Radio.
So they're going to be right across from us. It looks like, dozens. And I did a spot with ESPN Southwest Louisiana today, and they're going to be there as well. So it appears that there's going to be quite a few folks down there at Radio Row. I'm excited to do that next week. That's a first for me, and should be a lot of fun down there in the Big Easy next week for the big game. We can say Super Bowl in the air.
We're covering it. We're gonna be there. So I think we can call it that.
They don't have the rights exclusively. We can't advertise with.
No, that's what it is. Yeah. We can talk about Super Bowl 59.
We can say Super Bowl on the Sports Talk Radio Show.
Yeah.
We just can't use it in promos and stuff. Certainly with gambling.
Yeah.
So here we go. All right, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Speaking of gambling, there were unusual betting patterns surrounding the play of then Charlotte Hornets guard Terry Rozier. He's now with the Heat.
Okay.
This was in a game nearly 2 years ago. If you're wondering why that's being investigated now, it's because of the Jonte Porter investigation that is still ongoing.
Yeah.
He is, of course, banned for life from the NBA. Yeah. He's under investigation by federal prosecutors. The NBA confirmed this today, so there's no question whether or not there's an investigation going on around him. These guys will never learn. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. Looking at Terry Rozier's career earnings, it's going to come up here in a second.
It's going to be a lot
because he plays in the NBA.
He plays in the NBA, and he has been a starter multiple years. So those guys make a lot of money.
Pays a lot. Career earnings. This is on the court.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with shoe deals or whatever. On the floor, $133 million.
That's a lot of money.
Can we just not cook the betting lines for an extra couple grand? I mean, can we not?
I mean, so even if you're doing this, I've seen some speculation online of what actually happened, whether or not he was like doing this for people. He was telling people, hey, like kind of like what Jonte Porter was doing. Even if you're doing this for other people, these people are probably betting, who knows? I mean, maybe they're betting a lot, but either way.
You can't bet too much. You're going to raise flags.
Right. So as opposed to doing that, why don't you just say,
making
hey,
5,000 here and there.
Instead of me going out of the game for no reason and just saying, oh, I'm hurt, and these people making money, why don't you just give them money? Like, just get, if they want this money, just give it to them. You're not going to go, now this guy's probably going to get banned for life, just like Jonte Porter from the NBA. You can't make any money if you're banned from the NBA.
You can't make $133 million any easy way. I know. You
can go play in Europe maybe and make a couple $100,000, but that's about it. So that's just.
Come on, Terry. Is he scary Terry too, or is that just?
I don't know. I think it might just be Terry McLaurin.
Just McLaurin. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Next one here. This is some really sad news potentially for you, Hunt. Brewers All-Star.
I hate to hear that.
Brewers, starting with this. Brewers All-Star Christian Yelich. I don't think we like him very much.
Arch-nemesis is Christian Yelich.
He is hosting a charity event in Milwaukee. There will be a musical act that is headlining this event, Hunt, and unfortunately, it is the Goo Goo Dolls.
Oh, that's devastating.
You have previously called Yelich, as you just said, your arch nemesis.
Oh, God,
the Goo Goo Dolls are dead to you. Take it or leave it.
I mean, that's a tough scene. Yelich is my arch nemesis. The man has tormented me for years. He ruined one trip to Wrigley with a 3-run tank to center in the 8th inning to give the Brewers the win. I despise his baseball play in every way. He's not necessarily on Ryan Braun's level because Ryan Braun flagrantly cheated.
He did cheat.
Yelich is just awesome.
It's also not the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are.
Yeah, I mean, Yachty's number one.
Yeah,
but I hate Yelich, and for him to have the Goo Goo Dolls, the charity event
that's
like that, that cuts deep.
It does.
I think they really need to. I mean, I don't know what the charity's for. Maybe that influences me. Maybe it doesn't. Who's to say? But it's very disappointing. The Goo Goo Dolls would take on that undertaking.
So the question is, Hunt, though, are they dead to you or not? I would say that you're probably going to be on probation.
They're not.
We'll leave it.
They're not. They're not dead to me. What a great band. Incredible stuff.
All right, next one. The AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am started today. We're not going to talk about your fantasy pick, though, Hunt. But anyways, number 7.
He was in first like 40 minutes ago.
Yeah, he made three bogeys in a row.
I would guess that Colin Morikawa has not made 3 bogeys in a row in his career.
Maybe at a U.S. Open. He's probably done it before.
Never.
Okay. I mean, he's played plenty of U.S. Opens.
Looks like me out there in a row at Webb Park making 3 bogeys in a row.
You never play Webb Park, Hunt. Don't say you would steep so low to that level. You would never do that.
I'm not anti-Webb. I just never played it.
Yeah, but you wouldn't because I've asked you to play at
That's a lie.
J.S. Clark
you
before.
have never asked me to play.
I have asked you.
I don't believe
you're
that.
Like, I won't play at J.S. Clark, but I'll play with somewhere else with you. Anyways, number 7 at Pebble is the best par 3 in the world. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave that.
Leave it alone.
12 at Augusta's got to be better. I think 16 at Cypress Point is significantly better.
I mean, Sawgrass.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most picturesque par 3. Maybe 16 at Cypress, but like I played Pebble and I played 7, and the wind wasn't blowing.
It's just
so it was the easiest hole I've ever played.
Yeah.
You just flip a 90-yard wedge down the hill, and it's a tap-in par. It was just there's nothing to it. But I understand. Like there was video last year when the wind was blowing 1,000.
5 irons.
Finau, it was a practice round.
Yeah.
Finau teed up a driver and popped it up into the wind. So there is that intrigue. And I think if the wind was blowing 30 miles an hour, I might have a different perspective of it from my personal experience. But it was calm, and I just hit a wedge to 20 feet and tapped in for par. Next.
All right, last one. Pels forward Zion Williamson, when asked...
He's not going to play.
He probably isn't, no. But when asked about playing back-to-backs, he said, this is quote from him, maybe make this clear to everybody. If I could play in back-to-backs, I would. Physically, yes, I can, but I work for the Pelicans. They have decided that based off the numbers, it's not smart to do that right now. If that's what they feel, I'm rocking with them on that. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. I get it. I understand. But the fact that he's in year, 6 or something, and he can't play 2 games in a row is just egregious. That's just ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
It's pathetic. All right, that's it. If you missed any of the show today, catch it on demand. Talked a lot of LSU baseball, some LSU football as well, a little bit of Saints with Luke Johnson. You can find it wherever you find your sounder. Thursday shows are brought to you by Rouse's. Matt's going to drive you home. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place. Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.